In today's video, breaking news out of Washington, the Trump administration has agreed to fund SNAP benefits despite the ongoing government shutdown. This decision comes after a series of legal battles, political pressure, and a growing outcry from families. And so we're breaking it all down, showing you how each side is presenting their case and what it means for the people caught in the middle. But before we get into the announcement itself, let's back up and look at how all this unfolded. Take a listen.
More now on our breaking news. A second judge has ruled that the Trump administration must use emergency funds to at least partially cover SNAP benefits in November. Remember, 42 million Americans depend on these benefits for groceries to feed themselves and their families.
Yeah, so many people. And Renee Marsh is following this. Renee, what else are we learning? A very quickly moving story here.
Yeah, so these two judges, one in Boston and one in Rhode Island, making these decisions really just minutes apart. And so what we have here at this hour is that these two federal judges are aligned in saying that the Trump administration is required to tap into this emergency fund that is sitting at the USDA that contains close to $6 billion. They must tap into that fund to keep SNAP benefits going. If you remember, the Trump administration said because of the shutdown, they had spoken to states and told them that payments would not be made on November 1st. That meant that some 42 million people who rely on this program starting tomorrow were not going to have funds on their cards to buy groceries for their families. But
hello, Chair. This question for the Secretary. The minority leader in the House said yesterday, Hakeem Jeffries, that the term he used was lying, that some of these SNAP benefits couldn't be liberated. Can you explain, refute that, give us your perspective, what their perspective is, and what your argument is, why it is?
Yeah, and I appreciate the opportunity to explain that. So the fact that the Democrats are saying, but wait, USDA has money in their accounts, why it is really their fault, I've seen it over and over and over from some of their leaders, is absolute false, and it is a lie. We have been saying on October 10th, we sent messages out. On October 24th, we sent messages out. These benefits end on November 1st. Now, let me get down into a little bit of the details on that to better explain. So there is a contingency fund at USDA, but that contingency fund, by the way, doesn't even cover, I think, half of the $9.2 billion that would be required for November SNAP, but it is only allowed to flow if the underlying program is funded. It's called a contingency fund, and by law, contingency fund can only flow when the underlying fund is flowing.
Now, what you just heard there came after the ruling from those two federal judges, and that was the breakdown from the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins. And what she's saying there is that those contingency funds can only be used to supplement regular monthly benefits when the money that is there isn't sufficient enough. In other words, that fund isn't there to replace a regular appropriation that doesn't exist. But the judges are saying that under the actual language of the SNAP law, if money is sitting in that contingency fund, the administration is legally obligated to pay it out. That was my takeaway after digging deeper into this issue. But let's turn to CNN, which was first to report on the Trump administration being open to funding SNAP, but wants legal clarification from the court following those comments we heard from Brooke Rollins a moment ago. Take a listen.
Just into our politics lead, moments ago, President Trump responded to the rulings today from two different federal judges who said that the White House and the Agriculture Department must use the billions of dollars in contingency funds to at least partially cover food stamp benefits in November. CNN's Jeff Zeleny is at the White House. Jeff, what did the president have to say?
Well, Jake, it was that back-to-back ruling from the federal judges that got the White House's attention. Certainly the president just a few moments ago writing on Truth Social from his Mar-a-Lago resort that the White House is now willing to pay. Let's take a look at part of his message here. It says, our government lawyers do not think that we have the legal authority to pay SNAP with certain monies we have available. And now two courts have issued conflicting opinions on what we can and cannot do. The president writes, I do not want Americans to go hungry just because the radical Democrats refuse to do the right thing and reopen the government. Therefore, he says, I have instructed our lawyers to ask the court to clarify how we can legally fund SNAP as soon as possible. Of course, SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program also known as food stamps. It helps 42 million Americans, about 1 in 8 Americans. So this, of course, is the deadline that is looming tomorrow. So the White House is now saying they will pay. The question is, Jake, how long will that take to actually get enacted? Because it will take a while for the USDA to send the money to the states. And it's not enough to fund the entire month, but only partial funding. But for the first time, the president is saying he will pay the SNAP funds, much like he did military funding earlier this week. But what it does not do is move the shutdown any closer to being a reach. The president, of course, is not here. The House has been out of Washington for more than a month. The Senate also is not in Washington. So the shutdown is entering a second month here. But at least the SNAP benefits, it looks like, will be paid at least in part.
Imagine not having to show up to work for a month and still get paid. Man, nice work if you can get it.
So here's the real question. What happens now? Those emergency funds, if they end up getting used, that means that account becomes depleted and it doesn't even cover the entirety of the month. And with Democrats still refusing to reopen the government, who does this really harm more, Democrats or Republicans, when it comes to public pressure? Because this move doesn't bring the shutdown any closer to ending. If anything, it only makes Democrats look worse. If things continue to go the way they've been, they'll vote again, they'll stall again, and the leaders, Hakeem Jeffrey, Chuck Schumer, will keep the chaos going while pretending to care about the people caught in the middle. But to me, this whole SNAP situation did expose something much bigger. The scale of dependency we built into the system. 42 million people in this country are on SNAP. And that raises the hard but necessary question, how many of those people truly need it versus how many people are mooching off the system? Take a listen.
Yeah, go ahead. I'd already called on. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
Madam Secretary, question to you. So I know you addressed the contingency fund, but SNAP has never run out of funding in its 60-year history. That's right. During a shutdown. Why were past administrations able to find funding to keep it afloat in a shutdown if you can't?
Well, let me see. I've got a chart I want to show you all on the SNAP funding. My charts are slightly wanky because our print shop is closed because we're furloughed. So it was a little arts and crafts time over at USDA early this morning. So this is the chart of the SNAP program. Now, I know everyone can't see this, but this goes back to October of 2023. And I want everyone to follow. This is the red line that under Joe Biden, you see an almost 30% increase in the cost of the SNAP program over the 4 years that President Biden and the USDA was overseeing it with Congress funding it. And you see now the downward trend since President Trump was reelected November, and we've had about 650,000 people move off of SNAP since President Trump was elected. A press conference for another time. That's obviously the goal of all these programs, is to move families into real work and the dignity of that. I say that because the astronomical costs of the SNAP program under Joe Biden was historical. It was unprecedented, and we don't have the same levels of funding that were there in the past.
Two things can be true. We can acknowledge that there are people who genuinely do need help in this country, and they should get it. In a country like ours, the disabled, the elderly, veterans that have sacrificed for this nation should never have to worry about if they can eat or survive. I feel for them, especially when they're caught in the middle of this political chaos and not receiving the funds they depend on. But then there's the other side. And look, I understand that there are families who fall on hard times and they just need a little bit of help getting back on their feet. I'm not ignoring that either. Life does happen. But SNAP should not be a permanent safety net for people who make irresponsible decisions and then expect the government to carry them indefinitely. And unfortunately, that part happens also. Here's a family out of California talking about their fear of SNAP benefits running out. And I just want you to pay attention to what was said here. Take a listen.
Ever been to the food bank before?
No, we never have.
This is your first time here.
Correct.
Are you scared?
Well, highly afraid because, I mean, we didn't ask for these kids to come, and what are we going to do? Deny them? We have them. We have to take care of them. We have to find a way, and it's hard right now with everything that's going on. People are even afraid to come out of their houses to work. It's really bad. And especially with everything going on with the president saying that we have to hang in there, how are we going to hang in there with the kids? Like, there's no way at all.
Thanksgiving coming up.
Especially, imagine the people. It's not fair for anybody.
What is your message right now to the federal government?
I mean, what can we say?
Did you hear what she just said? We didn't ask for the kids. Now, unless someone brought them kids over there and just left them, and she's being a good Samaritan, they're not biologically hers, has a kind heart, those two adults there has something to do with that situation. And the fact that it's an inability to even understand and grasp that much, she wasn't able to. That's a problem. And she is not singling her out. She's not a lone wolf in this type of situation. There are thousands, if not millions, of adults out there who each and every single day, they make poor decisions, and then they depend on the government once they start having kids in order to then solve their problem. And they never really do anything to actually fix the problem. Now, I'm a firm believer that most people need pressure applied in order to bring out their best. If not, most will settle for mediocrity in just getting by. And it's not because just getting by becomes this wonderful life, but because it's manageable. It becomes comfortable, even if it's not necessarily what they want. It becomes the easy out compared to the other option, which is putting a large amount of effort, energy, and focus into moving yourself out of a particular situation where you need to be on SNAP benefits. And so as long as we have a system in place that basically rewards people for their irresponsible and poor choices, they're going to look to take advantage of it in some way, shape, or form. And so for the welfare abusers who don't want to work, they don't have any intention of ever getting off of government assistance, or who keep having kids with no plan to take care of them, there needs to be a timer, a limit, a point where the benefits stop. Plain and simple. The welfare system has done more harm, more destruction to conservative family values and personal responsibility than any policy in modern history. Because when people believe that the government will always rescue them from their own reckless decisions, it removes the incentive to build strong families, plan ahead, and take ownership for their lives. And we really shouldn't be dependent on the government to that extent. We should be depending on each other through family, through community, through faith. That's why things like who you choose to have children with matters. Marriage matters. That's why personal responsibility matters. And we just need to get back to a place where people rely on their families, their communities, and their own initiative more than they rely on politicians. Because when survival depends on one another, not government, that's when you rebuild the values that make community strong. But now I'd like to hear back from you. Drop your comments down below. I appreciate when you guys take the time to chime in. As always, the best way you can show your support and that you enjoy the content is by smashing that thumbs up. That tells me you like the video. And subscribe for more breakdowns just like this. And make sure you stick around for the next video. Hakeem Jeffries stumbles after CNN host drops receipts on his government shutdown hypocrisy. Stick around for that. And as always, until next time.